What's up, family? Welcome to another episode of the 1/4 Careers Podcast. Today, I'm bringing you episode 2 of our executive series. I'm Xavier, your host, and I'm here with Tanarra Schneider. Tanarra graduated from the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign with a Bachelor of Arts in English Literature. From there, Tanarra has experienced a quickly ascending career across user experience, digital design, strategy consulting, DE&I, and even dance. More recently, Tanarra served as the Vice President, Head of Inclusive Practices at Activision Blizzard. Now, Tanarra is self-employed as an independent org change consultant, team and leadership coach, and business anthropologist. Tanarra is also a supermom to her lovely daughter. Tanarra, welcome to the pod.
Hey, what's up?
Yeah,
good to see your face.
I know. Likewise. Just adulting, making it through life, right?
Most days. There are days when I'm not entirely sure I'm adulting, but we get there.
Exactly. And for folks watching, this is exactly why I love Tanarra. We've had so many of these little convos where she's been so truly human and open to talk to. And I'm sure you just even these first several seconds, you all kind of see the energy there. That's why she is definitely a part of my family. So Tanarra, thank you so much for being here today. Super excited to talk to you. Even more excited for people to hear from you. That's why I love this platform, to amplify just amazing role models and characters that are out here being uber productive, a part of the communities that we exist in. So to start, I would be honored if you could share with the people a little bit of background about yourself. What's most relevant for people to know?
That's a really good question, because relevance really is in the eye of the beholder, right? So hopefully what I'm going to say is relevant, but I'll pick it up from the intro. I am a mom, first and foremost. My kiddo is incredible. They are 11, headed into 6th grade. So we've spent our summer kind of getting ready for that. And at the same time, I've spent the summer reflecting on my career journey, because I'm headed someplace completely different, at least for me, than where I've been. So that's pretty cool. I'm Chicago born and raised. I have been a consultant in a few different spaces across my career, like you mentioned. And really started, I think, understanding my leadership journey when I led a dance company in college. So that was where the culmination of what I thought I wanted to be when I grew up, which was a dancer. Really thought that's what was going to happen until I had an injury when I was 17, and I knew that wasn't where I was headed. So that was a really interesting moment for me. And not all that dissimilar, this summer was about recovering from like some corporate trauma and some, different kinds of injuries to figure out what I was going to do next. So I'm me. I'm almost 50. I'm a Black woman from the Midwest. I'm queer, and I love really understanding how people are motivated to do what they do and helping to support them on their journeys.
That is amazing. And that's also a perfect transition into our first segment called The Step Back, where I ask you, what did you want to be when you were growing up? You've already teased out that you wanted to be a dancer, and you mentioned there was a very interesting moment you experienced of maybe realizing that there would need to be an alternative. Can you shed some more light to what that experience was like and how you would explain that journey from what you wanted to be towards there being something else out there for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a moment of deep heartbreak, right? 17 years old. I tore the labrum in my right hip, and that was the end of it for me. And it had been kind of a road up to that, because I really struggled with my own confidence and wasn't sure I was ever going to really make it. So to know that that journey was over was really sort of formative. It wasn't like I'm going to go to college and shoot for the moon and see what's going to happen. It was this is over. Um, but on the journey to repair that thing, I realized that I really wanted to help other people who were overcoming injuries. So what I went to college for originally was actually physical therapy. I thought I wanted to be a physical therapist. I thought I wanted to help people recover and find their way back from different kinds of injuries and get healthy. And that's what started my college journey at U of I. But where it ended, and this is like part of that repair story, right? Where it ended was remembering that there were things that I loved. And um, the road to PT is very much like the road to med school. It's steeped in biology and it's deep in all that stuff, which is wonderful. But I love stories. I love hearing stories. I love writing stories. I love constructing stories. Dance was part of that. Dance was just me telling stories with my body. And so studying English literature and dissecting stories and making new ones was another way for me to continue that love. So I got to dance in college, not professionally, technically, but I ran a dance company for my last couple of years. I choreographed a musical and I got to tell stories in multiple ways. And that really is what led me to the career that I have now, is my ability to understand, empathize, and tell stories to make an impact.
I love that. And I'm curious, I'm sure storytelling has something to do and has always been intertwined into the roles that you've held. More recently, working at Activision Blizzard, how would you describe some of your roles and responsibilities when you were there as a VP for DE&I? And then even also, how do you approach wanting to maintain storytelling and you being self-employed?
Yeah. Um, so that like you'll look at my resume and be like, well, what, this woman has done a ton of things. How does all this stuff make sense, right? So when I end up at ABK, in the DE&I team, part of my job, I fundamentally hold true that part of my job as the VP of Inclusive Practices was to understand stories from different populations, different audiences, and help weave those together. And some of that actually was just getting people to listen to other people's stories. So much of the reason that we sort of push people away or we step away from this space of welcoming people in is that people feel unfamiliar, they feel threatening, it feels like it's not a safe space. And one of the safest ways and easiest ways to do that with people and to create that safe space is to allow people to tell and to hear other people's stories. So for me, a lot of the work that I've done, whether it's in design, understanding and empathizing with users and what their real needs are and understanding those and translating those through stories to the people who are creating products and services. It's the same thing on the DE&I side. It's really breaking down like, what's the story that we're telling? What is the story of us as a collective? And how do we get each other? Like, how do we get people to listen to each other's stories, to build that empathy, to be vulnerable, and to really share those narratives? Because narratives can change the way that we view things. Even our own narratives, right? The things we believe about ourselves and the way other people see us. There's a story there too. So, that's the work really when I walked away from sort of being inside of corporate spaces that I want to continue. So, my work now as an independent consultant is around culture and transformation, but it's understanding the story of the organization. It's navigating relationships between people and the stories they tell each other and the stories we tell ourselves, and using that as coaching tools, giving people the tools to express themselves in a healthy way, to actually create healthy dissent, which is a huge part of my brand, really is, healthy, constructive dissent. um, and using those new stories that we create together to sort of push us past sort of sticking points that we get in, or to break cultural norms that, keep us from accomplishing the things that we want to accomplish.
Thank you for that. I love the story of some of your interests and passions and how that translates to you working for yourself. I'm actually curious about entrepreneurship, and I selfishly want to ask this because I know that you're a person where, at least through behavior, people have probably perceived you as being fearless or, as your LinkedIn says, badass by nature. I'm curious with entrepreneurship, what advice do you have for people who may think entrepreneurship is for them? Maybe they're on the younger side or no matter their age, but they're a little timid. They're a little intimidated, not knowing if entrepreneurship is for them, maybe not what goes into it. How have you grappled with becoming an entrepreneur, your approach, and any advice you have for those who are a little bit concerned about should I do this or should I just stay on the corporate straight and narrow?
I think no matter the field you're in, there's a few things that you should like really consider and ask yourself before you become an entrepreneur. So this is my second run at working for myself. The first run, it did not go well. It went for a while and then it did not go well. And that was on the catering and event planning side. It's a whole other career. Um, but the thing I'll say about entrepreneurship, and at least at this point in my life, one, you really have to ask, are you willing to do all of the things that come with running a business? Right? Because it really is just you, or it's you and a small team of people, and you have to navigate all of the things. So I have ADHD. I dislike organization, but I need it desperately. There's a lot of uphill battle for me in working for myself because it means I got to do all the administrative stuff, not just have amazing conversations and like coach people. I still got to pay bills. I got to register the business. You got to do all the stuff, right? So, one, ask yourself, are you willing to do all of the things? Like organize yourself, do all the things that come with it. The second question, though, and maybe more importantly, is can you do this work for somebody else and still be happy? Like, can you do this working for somebody else and still be happy? And maybe the question then is yes, but I also have a different perspective, or I have something else I want to bring and I can't quite bring that here. Maybe that's a question of timing then. Maybe you want to be an entrepreneur, but maybe you don't need to do it now, or you can slowly phase your way into it. I am almost 30 years into working. It was not a question for me. I did not want to go work for anybody else. I have the opportunity. I'm sure that I can. And if I need to again, I will. It's not about ego. I really want to do the work I want to do at this point, not the work I have to do. And working for somebody else, you generally have to do the work you have to do. Hopefully, it intersects with the work you want to do. So, but on the timid side, the thing I'll say, and this probably connects with advice I should have given myself when I was starting out, is if you have something to say and you can't say it where you are, or you don't think people will support you, then take a shot on yourself. If you can afford to do it, take the shot. Failure is not a bad thing. You will learn something. There's always something to take away from it, and you can recover, right? But if you never do it, you're always going to have those questions, and you're always going to wonder whether or not if you had taken a shot, would it have been worth it? So, you know, I am brave, not fearless. Brave is doing it anyway, right? Fearless is a little bit like bonkers. I'm not fearless. I'm brave. I'm scared to death. Right? I got a kid to support. I've got to support myself. I've got a mortgage, all the things that come with being a 50-year-old woman, right? Health insurance. I don't have a choice. There's not a choice for me in doing this. I need to do this, right? So if you need to do it, take a shot on yourself.
I love the openness and I love the real talk that I knew was going to exist here for this episode. Now, even in that short amount of time, I'm sure people here are absorbing some of your personality, some of your philosophies, and who you are as a person that you're sharing. How would you describe your leadership style and your leadership philosophy?
Mm, my leadership philosophy is that I am here to support you. I'm not in this for you to support me, and like it's not a glory trip. Being a leader for me is about making people giving people the space to be their absolute best, right? And supporting them when they fall short of whatever that mark is. And it's not my mark, right? I have expectations of the people who work with me. You know this. You've worked with me, right? I have expectations. But I also know that as a leader, my style is that we are shoulder to shoulder and in this together, right? So if there is something that I don't do well, but you do well, then I want you to coach me and tell me. If I do something well and you need my support, I'm there for you. Because ultimately, it's not my job to like to tell you what to do. It's my job to set up what the thing is and give you the autonomy and the clarity, right? To go and achieve that thing and then to be there with you as we learn and as we get better and better and better. Um, I have a ton of experience, and in some places I have expertise, but it doesn't mean that I am the authority on things and that we shouldn't be working together side by side. So that's really it. It's like I believe in setting up people for success and creating a safe, psychologically safe, empathetic, and frankly vulnerable environment where we can laugh together, cry together, sweat together, all of it. Like we do all the things we need to do because ultimately if I'm working with you, then we're a team. It doesn't really matter what my title is.
Yeah. Well, 4 years later in my career, I still get the question of what was your favorite project at Accenture, and I'm sure Tanara, you know the one that was my favorite. It was definitely a safe team, and it was my first time experiencing. Oh, this is what it should feel like. So, thank you for that. We had a rock star cast there, and really excited to ask you this next question. As we go back into your start of your career, I want to know, do you have any stories earlier in your career that you feel really solidified your brand with any particular group? It could be family or it could be coworkers or bosses. What do you think on and you're like, that's when I really feel that I showed my brand and it was really noticed, and that's kind of when that continued to grow?
I've been working for a long time, friend.
Or it can even be recently when you entered a new organization where you feel like your brand was solidified just like that.
I mean, I think if I'm honest, if I look back on it, it happened really early. Like, there is no question for me that the person that I am, frankly, at work and at home, is the person that I've always been. I just had to grow into pieces of it along the way. Um, okay, 2 stories. One, I'm 26, working for a Tribune company at the time, and I am in a place where I'm doing, like, big, like, PeopleSoft ERP training, and I am the training lead at 26. No business doing this. I am the training lead for a massive PeopleSoft implementation for HR. And we are out of money. We're out of money. And they just acquired more companies, and we've got more people to train. And we had done it on a shoestring budget, lots of late nights, lots of blood, sweat, and tears. And so I said, well, how about we pitch the board for more money? If they want this to be a success, we probably need to tell somebody that we're struggling, right? And that our results could be better if we had something different. Everybody went, oh God, don't do that. We don't want to admit that we don't, have the money. Well, we can't finish this if we don't have money. So I presented to the board of Tribune and I asked for $20 million and I got it. But I was absolutely terrified. I think I probably threw up before that meeting. And it's the big, like, in the round, like, there's, we're in, like, the big auditorium and we've got to present results. And I realized a couple of things about myself. One, brave, not fearless. Two, it does not make sense to me to not ask the question. I don't have a problem looking bad, right? And you actually learn this. Some of the best leaders at Accenture will tell you this. If you don't ask for help, then it's your fault. You get what you get, right? And so I think I learned that early on. Like, I had to ask, and it was hard to ask. Conversely, a few years later, I am recruited for this role at an airline in New York. And I'm brought in and they know who I am at this point. Like, I wasn't really mincing words. I was like, your training stuff is terrible. This really is not going to do what you want it to do. And I had written pretty extensive training manuals, and done a lot of e-learning development. So I was coming in to really help them build an e-learning organization. And I got there and I had a lot of opinions. I had opinions in my interview. It wasn't like I didn't have opinions when they met me. I was told about 2 months into my tenure that I should sit back and quietly listen for a few more months before I judged what was happening because I was upsetting people. So my boss looked me in my face and said, I just think you should probably, listen more and talk less.
I wonder how that went over.
Um, it was a pretty straightforward conversation. You recruited me, you met me, you hired me. When I got here, you were actually using the training materials that I sent you as samples as models for the materials your team was developing before I walked through the door. So either you appreciate the work that I do or you don't, and we can make a decision here and go our separate ways. But I think you need me more than I need you. And that was the first time that I realized that people could value you, see you, bring you in, and still expect you to conform to a sense of hierarchy or appropriateness that only serves them. It didn't serve anybody else. He didn't want to look bad. As opposed to saying, I appreciate the questions you're asking. It's really hard to hear that because we thought we were doing really good. Like, there were so many other ways he could have approached that. And for me, it also taught me how I never wanted to talk to people. If I hire you and on day one you have an opinion, have the opinion. A constructive way to have said that might be, hey, there's a lot more history behind some of the things that you're asking. So let me help you unpack this rather than I think you should be quiet longer. It's so offensive. Um, and from a space of fear, right? So it's another one of those like moments of, oh, let me tell you who I am. That you got me wrong, right? And that sort of is the way that I function. It's the way that I work. It's the way that I've always worked, and it tends to upset the apple cart a little bit with people who are there to protect themselves rather than to grow and learn and admit that they don't know everything. And I've got multiple stories like that throughout my career. Actually, one of my first bosses at Accenture did a similar thing. And I said, "Are you scared that I have the answer? Or are you scared that I look stupid? Because I'm not scared that I look stupid. I think you're worried that I'm making you look stupid. Which one of these conversations are we having?"
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, as you've mentioned, upsetting the apple cart or individuals who may not take well to that person, to your personality or who you are, there could be naysayers who say, well, there's no way you can see success in your career approaching it this way. Like, but we're having the executive series episode for a reason. How would you describe the major contributors to your professional success? How have you been able to constantly ascend no matter where you're at? It appears that you've had an upward trajectory.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. One is always being willing to do the work. And I think that was something that served me well early on. There was never work that I wasn't willing to do. Right. So if we needed to rewrite a manual, if somebody needed to go do research, if I needed to fix something that was broken, if I needed to go sweep the floor, you do it. Right. Like, because that helps you also understand how things work. If there's work you're not willing to do, then there's a blind spot you have and you continue to have it. So I was always willing to do the work. I was also always that person who was like, there's a problem over there. I think I might be able to solve it or make a dent. Can I go do that? As opposed to waiting for somebody to hand me a promotion, a thing, or saying that's not my job, right? So it comes with the being willing to do the work, but it's also being a problem identifier and a problem solver, right? My partner likes to say, please don't bring me a flaming bag of dog, right? He's like, come and tell me that you put it out. Hey, there was a flaming bag and I put it out. And next time, could we? Right? Massive difference. And so being that person who was willing to say there's a problem and I think I have some solutions. They may not be 100% right, but can I try something? Right? That kind of just that attitude, and I think that ability to learn, right? So that's the other thing that I hope everybody recognizes at this point. Yeah, you went to college, please continue your education, especially if you love learning. Also know that what you studied in a book in school is only going to be relevant so far. There are so many people around you to learn from, so please don't walk out of whatever university you went to or whatever position you had last and assume that you know everything. There's so much to learn, and there's so many people who can teach you, from the person who mops the floors to the CEO. The person who mops the floors sees a different side of the company you're working for than that CEO does. So respect them and know that you can learn from anybody. That's another piece of the puzzle. Is I love to upset the apple cart. I love to blow things up. I also like to do it with respect and empathy and problem solving and on the same side of the table rather than across the table. I don't want to be anybody's adversary. It's not why I'm doing the work that I do. It's not why I've ever done the work that I've done. It happens sometimes. And it happens usually because either I have, put my foot in my mouth or I've said something that's upset somebody and they think that there is no way to repair it. So I do my best to recover from mistakes that I've made because I've made them, right? We all do. I apologize. I know how to apologize. Learn how to apologize, folks. There's actually a really great, super short TED talk on the art of apologizing. Watch it. Learn how to apologize. It is one of the best tools ever because the more you learn how to apologize and recognize when you've done something wrong, it's so powerful. It's so powerful. And it gains you so much generosity in whatever system you work in, right? So those things, right? Being innately human, being willing to admit my mistakes, being vulnerable. I cry at work. I've cried at work, y'all. It happens. I cry at work. I don't believe in being stoic either. So all of those things I think have helped me gain traction, not just with people who could promote me, but with people who I was able to promote, right? When you gain that traction in an organization, your value is seen differently by you and by those you work with. And so ascension, right? Ascending in a career looks really different. I've done a lot of this. It has not been a straight line, right? It's like a little bit, and then I take like a massive like left turn and scare everybody and then go do something else and then bring all that back, right? So all those things. When you do them and you do them willingly and you do them for you, not for the company, not, and I learned this lesson the hard way, not to be work famous, not for any of those things, it changes your perspective on what success means.
Wow. That was a lot of gems there. Y'all might have to go back and rewatch some pieces. I love that. That was a lot of gems. Honestly, too many for me to even comment on because I'm here just listening, writing it down, taking mental notes myself. And some of that is advice that you shared before, but it's awesome kind of hearing how a lot of that is coming up. In your career, you've had a lot of consulting type roles. You've done DE&I. I feel like in a lot of your roles, you've always just served. And a lot of that has translated to consulting. So I have a question for you about giving advice to other aspiring consultants of people who think they want to do consulting. Maybe they didn't know a lot about it at first. What advice would you give them about the nature of the work where they may not understand what they're getting into from a culture standpoint or even know where they can be a consultant at?
Yeah. So consulting is such a broad field, right? It's a really, really broad field. And most people think about consulting when they think about it, they think about the bigs, right? Where you and I worked, right? They think about Accenture, they think about, BCG, they think about Deloitte, they think about Bain. There's all kinds of consulting spaces out there, right? Depending on the type of consulting you want to do. So also like start there. Be smart about like what do you do now? What do you love about it? And what do you think you can bring to a consulting space? Because a consulting space is a combination of skills, like skills we have, whether that's I know a tech platform, so I know how to implement it, or I am you know, a studier of humans and, sort of business anthropology, and I really want to understand, or I love how organizations work, whatever those things are. It's a combination of that. And frankly, a combination of learning at lightning speed. Like that's the best way I can put it, right? Because you are going to be confronted with your clients' organizational issues, whatever those might be. It might be, old tech debt. It might be a financial situation. It could be a merger of two companies and you got to learn two company cultures. It really depends on the kind of consulting you want to do. So think about the skills you feel really strong in, right? What are you bringing? And then where do those things fit in these consulting companies? And then decide how fast paced you really want to be, because ultimately, I mean, we learned this at Accenture, but I think you learn this no matter what. You've got two clients when you're a consultant. You've got your own company and your leadership, and you've got your client's company and whoever your stakeholders are there. And the goal of a client services organization is to serve their clients. So schedules can be tight, timelines can be rough, opinions are going to like clash sometimes. The workload is not always evenly distributed. So you have to figure out whether or not you are really ready to take on the workload, the pace, the hours sometimes, and then think about what your boundaries are and how you hold them. Because ultimately, when you step into these organizations, a lot is expected of you, big or small organization, doesn't matter. A lot is expected of you. And you need to know how to say no for what you're saying yes to. I think it's really, really critical when you step into these organizations that you understand what your boundaries are and what they need to be, how to express them constructively, right? And how to work with your teams to hold space for yourself. Because consulting can be not just toxic and all the stuff you've heard about, but because you're giving so much of yourself, your mind, your heart, your energy, it takes a lot from you and you have to be able to restore that. So, that is one of the things that I think is really important. And frankly, when you're young, when you're single, you're perceived in a lot of consulting companies as being like way more available than somebody who's got kids or family or whatever it is. Your dog, your yoga class, all that's still important, right? Should not get sacrificed just because I need to go home and feed my kids, so somebody dumps my workload on you. That's what I mean by boundaries. Understand what you need to hold to stay healthy, because we need healthy consultants. We need people who can get into these organizations and really help support them. But there are a lot of trade-offs. So just consider those things.
And I think, and this isn't to scare anyone away from consulting, this is to really inform you and empower you on how to think about what you need, what's important to you. It's going to change person to person. And I think something that was invaluable for me was to have a sense of community and have people who could continue to coach me and nurture me and help me learn more about how to approach my career. So I want to pivot into talking about having a community at work. And I kind of want to ask you around representation at the workforce. So throughout your career, what has representation done for you? And maybe what has not having it done for you? Whichever one you feel maybe has been more prevalent and provided some more memorable experiences.
Okay. This is always a hard one. Um, I have been a first in a number of ways. And I remember when I started working, my mom, who is white, was very clear with me. She said, the world's going to see you as a Black woman, no matter what you do. So, one, be yourself, but remember that that's how they're going to see you. And she didn't mean that in a bad way. I think she was trying to make me aware that, we are treated differently in spaces, especially in corporate spaces. And, I started working in the 90s. So the world was a different place still then, especially for women. We won't even get into the LGBTQ plus queer side of corporate life. As a Black woman, representation has always been really important, but it's always been lacking. Crystal clear. Let me just be clear. I have been reminded multiple times that I was either going to get or not get a position because I am a Black woman, including when I made MD at Accenture. It was very clear that the laddering was happening, but I had an advantage because we were down, we were super low on women MDs and especially on MDs of color, right? And I was both. So it has been really hard to step into those shoes, whether there's representation because you feel like you're carrying the ball for everybody, or there's no representation. So you're consistently reminded that you are a token, that you're special in some way, or you're not special because of that. So I think it's made me more fiercely myself. If I can say representation on either side has done anything for me, it's made me more fiercely myself. It's also broadened my sense of what community means at work. It's given me an opportunity to both seek out people who are like me and really embrace people who on the surface are not, but we do the same thing. And so then we get to, have different opinions or different perspectives, different experiences. And it's created a space where I get to learn, really, really learn and be empathetic and vulnerable with people who are not like me. So I think ultimately representation holistically has been a teacher for me, right? But the biggest gift it's given me is that it has made me way, way, way more fiercely myself. It made it easy for me to come out and just say I'm bisexual, I'm queer. It made it easy for me to be very clear with people. You don't have to understand what I actually am, but please know that I'm a person of color. So the conversation you're having, entirely unacceptable right now, right? To be able to stand up and say, I'm here. We are here. We are in this room. And I'm going to hold this space then fiercely myself as a first, as a second, as a hundredth, whatever it is, for anybody coming behind me.
I know that has done so much more for people coming behind you. And I thank you for that work that you've done. And there was actually a story you had told a long time ago that stuck with me and it made me smile when you conveyed how you were talking to this senior client. You were there for a group presentation with other leaders at the firm. And I believe you had your leather jacket on or you had some jacket on and the vibes are all cool and great. And then, lo and behold, you remove your jacket to show that you have tattoos, something that I think young people today and just people today in general, when you think about the corporate space, there's always this hesitation with having tattoos that are visible. And this fear around, well, is this a culture that accepts tattoos, or it's just become such an open topic or something that's been noticeable that it is a sticking point in some organizations. So that is but the tiniest of examples of like Tanarra has gone in and fiercely been herself.
But the best part of that story is that when I took my jacket off, our main client smiled. And at the end, she pulled me over and said, I was really skeptical about this team. It feels really stiff. And then you took your jacket off. And I was like, oh, there's somebody human here. And we had this wonderful conversation. And I honestly am not sure we would have sustained that work had I not opened the door for other people to, metaphorically take their jackets off, right? Because there was so much posturing happening in the room. And for me, it's always been a piece of armor, which is I'm going to play the game until it's time for me to not play the game. And when I stop playing the game, that means I have read the room and I have seen something that means we need to change what's happening here. Right. And that's the I'll upset the apple cart, especially when I think it really matters and it's going to make a difference, not just because it's fun. Right. I'm not a rebel because it's fun. It's because we need little rebellions, right, to make the kinds of change that we need to see in companies or to push people past a place where they're accepting the status quo and they get to say, maybe we don't have to do that. Maybe we could do something else.
And I think what's tremendous as well and should never get lost is, I'm not talking to someone who's just a rebel just because, or I'm not talking to someone who ends up where they are not because they're absolutely amazing. And you mentioned it earlier of being a hard worker, even from when you first started out working, being willing to do any job. So I think at times there is a topic of entitlement that sometimes there's a war on the word and how the younger generation is perceived, or just in general, how people navigate the workforce. And I think it's incredibly important to know that as you're looking to be that person to disrupt a space or looking to open the door or keep a door open or widen a door, it does matter how much you're credentialed by the effort and work you put in. It's very different if you're not putting in the work, and it's almost as if to some you don't have a leg to stand on because you're underperforming or you're not really growing in a role. But it's very different, and you have so much more power of influence when you are grinding, when you do have the results, or when you are asking those questions and not really self-preserving your image, but more, hey, I'm a part of this team. I need to ask this question because we need to get this done. This isn't just me. So those are just a couple of tidbits that I do want to call out for those who are watching, who may, you're getting caught in the words because Tanarra is amazing, but do not fail to see that she has risen to the different points in life and professionally where she is because of her tenacity, because of her work, her production, her performance, which has been absolutely exceptional in every space that she's been in. So I think that was an important call out as well.
No, I appreciate that. And I think that's a huge part of the narrative, right? I've had wonderfully talented people who have worked with me on teams, and I've seen their impatience to, accelerate in their career and this desire to grow. And yes, sometimes it comes across as entitlement. And I think it's actually really important to hit on this. I had somebody work for me who assumed I had like almost a PhD in the work that we were doing. And he made a comment. He's like, well, I feel like I paid my dues and all these kids here, who don't have master's degrees and blah. And I was like, I don't have a master's degree. I went to graduate school. There's a whole story behind that, but I was like, I don't have a master's degree. I was like, but I also have 15 more years of work experience than you do. I was like, so ask yourself, what other things are people bringing to the table? So when we see something like somebody has a position or a role or something that we want, or somebody's not appreciating our ideas or our input, the question isn't like, well, what do they know? The question is why? Like the question should always be, why are they viewing me as somebody who's not, worthy of contributing? And I think all of us are worthy of contributing. It doesn't really matter. I don't care what degree you have. I've met, PhDs and MBAs who can't contribute to a conversation. It's not that's not the judgment point. The judgment point is, did you do the work? Do you understand the problem that we're trying to solve? Are you asking really good informed questions, or are you making judgments because you think you know better? right? And then actually doing the work, like being in the trenches. When I was doing design work, I was in there making wireframes. It wasn't just like, oh, it should look like this and do this. Like, I'm in there like, okay, I need the box here and the button here and move the thing. You have to understand, especially as a leader, you have to understand the work your team is doing. You may not be the best at it. God, I hope I'm not the best at it. I hope I have people who are working for me who are better at it than I am. But for real, like, if you don't even understand the work that they're doing, don't deign to judge the work that they're doing. Ask them, seek to understand before you judge, because it matters. That stuff matters, right?
You cannot lose your team's respect in that way. That has been a career stopper, halter. You need to switch orgs. The minute you have a team, people you're managing, and maybe you're not aware or you're oblivious and you're not familiar with the work they're doing, and they feel unappreciated or they feel that you're just barking orders out of authority with not really respecting their craft, that a lot of times we all go to work and we're spending time away from our family. So I think there's a certain level of non-hierarchy that should be adhered to in the workplace. And I think Accenture, there are some great places where we have that, especially on our team, we had that. And I think that has been so empowering. So I appreciate you mentioning that. I have a vulnerable question for you that I think a lot of people can learn from, and I'm interested to hear what your answer may be. As you reflect and as you've experienced so many different roles, you've experienced life, you've been around the block a couple times. Do you have any regrets professionally or personally that you maybe like to share with the audience that you think some people can learn from?
Um, no. Hang on though. Don't have regrets. Because to regret something I did or didn't do is also then to regret where I am now. I've learned a lot of lessons, though, and some of them have sucked, really sucked. I I learned early on that, like, talking myself out of things before somebody else could, right? We call it imposter, you can call it imposter syndrome, whatever you want. I have talked myself out of trying to do something or going after something, which is why I can vehemently say, if you think you can do something, take a chance on yourself, because there were times that I didn't. I don't regret it. And I don't regret it because some of those moments would have meant major curveballs in my life. And I wouldn't be here in my house with my dog and my kid and the life that I have and the community that I have, right? So, do I wonder about those other paths? Yes. Do I regret them? No, because the gifts that I have, the things that I've been given in my life that I've earned, that I've worked for, that I've built, wouldn't be here, right? But I will say, um, kindness, not niceness. There were times in my life when I was not kind to people, right? So early on, right? A lot of this vulnerability and the empathy and the things I talk about now, those are lessons learned because I have absolutely, absolutely been torn to shreds by people that I was not kind to. And they owed me that. They owed me that lesson. Kindness is always worth it. It's always worth it to be kind, to seek to understand, and to give somebody a moment of kindness and vulnerability is always going to be worth your time because it's not about them. It's about you. So, if I can leave you with one piece of advice, it is choose kindness whenever you can. I know it sounds like a live, laugh, love sign. Absolutely, I will tell you, choose kindness because I have had people not be kind to me. I've also not been kind to people, and I've learned my lesson the hard way. Be kind.
Something that's connected to that. I'm a big sports person. Sometimes you hear people recounting their careers, or even people early in their careers, where they say, "What do you want to be remembered for?" And so often we hear people say, "I don't want to be remembered for the points I put on the board. Or I don't want to be remembered for being X, Y, Z." And sometimes, of course, you want the personal accolades, but you hear a lot of people say, "I want to be remembered for the type of teammate I was, or the kind of person I was." And I think there's a correlation when we think about our professional careers. What kind of teammate do you want to be? What kind of coworker do you want to be? How do you want to be remembered from contributing? Years from now, people won't remember you getting the perfect slide right. They're going to remember how you treated them, how you supported them. They're going to remember the safety you provided them. And when you mention how important it is to choose kindness, also know this: whatever you do, you are choosing habits. You are reinforcing habits. You're creating habits. So if you're younger in your career and you're not choosing kindness, you're not going to be able to just wake up one day and all of a sudden be kind. You're probably not even going to realize you're not being kind until so much later. So building the right habits are so critical. And that is with everything. Building the right habits as soon as you can. And a lot of times you get that from mentors. So if any of you are listening or watching and you're not sure if you're building the right habits, or you don't know, or you really want to make sure you're building the right habits, we talked about community, we talked about mentors, just seeking to get better each day. I think it's just so vital. So please choose kindness. I love that. Well, as we get ready to end, I have one more segment for you. And it is called the three piece. It is food inspired. You are in Chicago. It's a lot of Southerners in Chicago too. I'm originally from Mississippi, but food inspired, getting a three piece of this, three piece of that. I need a three piece from you on your career journey thus far. What would be your three words to describe that journey?
Design led, variety, love.
Mm, I like that. It's one of my favorite questions to ask to see how people characterize their careers. That's great. It's really great. Well, I do want to provide you the mic and leave you the space, like I do all my guests. You have poured so much into the audience, so much of yourself, the transparency, the openness. It's been incredible, and it's been a treat to hear and recount some of those stories. I want to give you the space for anything you have going on in life, special projects, professional, personal. How can people support you? And is there anything you want to plug, whether it's nonprofits or your own businesses, anything like that? I know you're well established in that community, being in Chicago. So I don't know. Do you have anything for people to look up, connect on?
Um, it's a really good question. There's I'll just a couple shout outs. If you are in the culture space, at all in the work that you do, DE&I, org culture, HR, there's a wonderful organization called Call for Culture that I'm a member of, started by an amazing woman named Angela Howard. Check it out. Um, our next conference will be in May of 2025. It is a lab more than it is a conference. It's a wonderful experience, especially if you are looking to grow your community, accelerate, change what you're doing, find new ideas, and really open yourself up to the work. That's a great place to do it. So I would check out Call for Culture. And on the community front in Chicago, um, I would just say if you have the time and energy, look around for organizations that are about helping to strengthen the neighborhood that you're in. So go local. Like, I don't care what neighborhood you're in, but go local. Actually, it's probably germane no matter where you are. But if you're in Austin or near Austin in Chicago, Austin Helping Hands is always looking for folks to help out. There's wonderful places that you can connect to. But I would just say, even if you have a couple of hours a month, go local, do something in your local community that helps bolster whatever is happening, and make somebody's day just a little bit easier and better. My company launches in October, so watch me on LinkedIn, and more to come on that. I'm not giving anything else away.
I love it. Stay tuned. There will be some links in the description for you guys to check out some of that. Tanarra, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for joining the show, for pouring so much into the pod. This has been a huge treat for me. Was super ecstatic when we were able to get this on the books. I, did my little dancey dance, told the wife, I got Tanarra on the show. We're going crazy here, but I thank you for being a part of this, as hopefully I ascend to scale and help people. And I think you are a very pivotal part of that journey. You've been a part of my journey in life. And of course, you're a part of the show. So this was a treat for me. Thank you so much for stopping by.
Wonderful for me too. I'm happy to have been part of your journey up until now, and I can't wait to continue to support you as you go forward. Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll talk and I'll see you around. Everyone, this was an amazing pod. This is my second executive series episode. I've been excited and really enjoying doing this. And I'm sure there are so many other communities that I'm looking to bring to you, other people in different parts of their careers. I know previously it's been a little bit of people earlier in their careers. And, now I have executives. I just truly think in terms of our entire employee life cycle of where we are in our careers, there's a lot of value in you seeing people who look like you in the same communities as you, kind of how their life is going, and seeing different angles and different types of representation for you, to really provide as much well-rounded exposure as possible. I know in a lot of cases, you can't be what you don't see, or people come from different backgrounds. And the point of a lot of the content that comes from this pod is to show you that we're out there. We're out there, the success, the journeys, the realness, the life. Not only are we out there, but depending on what you want to do, you can do it as well. So I know a lot of times people may not know, I don't think I can do this, or I don't know anybody in this space. There's no way I can get there from here. I want to do my best to demystify that. So this was an amazing episode. Like, comment, subscribe, hit the notification button, comment and let me know what careers you want next. What executives do you want to hear from next? And check us out on all the platforms. And as always, stay happy, stay blessed,